May 8, 1945. Czechoslovakia, a forested hillside east of Pilsen near the village of Rokycany. 15 American soldiers lie in a defensive arc along a ridgeline. Below them, less than 200 meters down the slope, a column of German vehicles has stopped on the narrow road. Trucks, staff cars, one half-track. The engines are still running. Exhaust rises white in the cold morning air. The Americans are from the 16th Armored Division. They have two 30-caliber machine guns positioned behind fallen logs. Riflemen are spaced between them, prone, weapons shouldered. The field of fire is clear. The Germans are exposed. They are not moving forward or backward. They are simply stopped. It is 47 hours. The war in Europe officially ended at midnight, but the word has not reached everyone. Some units are still moving. Some are still armed. Some still believe they are at war. The machine gunners have their fingers on the triggers. The assistant gunners crouch beside them, belts ready. The lieutenant commanding the position lies at the center, binoculars raised. He is watching the column. He has not given an order. The Germans have not dismounted. They have not taken defensive positions. They are sitting in their vehicles, waiting. No one fires. No one moves. The silence is total. The American position was established 3 hours earlier, at first light, after the platoon was ordered to secure the road junction and prevent any German movement toward Pilsen. The city had been liberated by American forces 2 days prior, but scattered German units were still retreating east, trying to reach areas held by Wehrmacht forces that might negotiate surrender to the Western Allies rather than the Soviets advancing from the other direction. The lieutenant's name is Robert Kemper. He commands a platoon from the division's reconnaissance battalion. His orders were explicit: block the road, deny passage to German forces, and report any contact. Rules of engagement remained in effect. Armed enemy forces were to be engaged or compelled to surrender. The German column appeared at 0840 hours, moving west on the road below the ridge. When the lead vehicle reached the curve where the Americans had positioned themselves, it stopped. The entire column stopped behind it. Approximately 30 vehicles. No armor. No heavy weapons visible. Just transport trucks and staff cars carrying personnel. The Americans went to full alert. The machine guns were trained on the column. Riflemen took aim. Kemper raised his binoculars and studied the vehicles. He could see German soldiers in the truck beds. Some were standing. Some were sitting. None appeared to be manning weapons. The vehicles were packed with men, equipment, baggage. It looked less like a combat column and more like a convoy attempting evacuation. Kemper counted the vehicles twice. He estimated at least 200 men. His platoon numbered 15. He had radio contact with battalion, but reinforcements were 30 minutes away at minimum. The tactical situation was clear. His platoon had the advantage of position and firepower at this range, but if the Germans dismounted and assaulted the ridge, the Americans would be outnumbered and vulnerable. Standard procedure was to challenge the column or open fire if they advanced. Kemper did neither. He watched and waited. The training manuals for infantry engagement were clear. When encountering enemy forces, assess their strength and intent. If they pose a threat, engage to neutralize or suppress. If they do not immediately comply with orders to surrender, fire warning shots. If warning shots are ignored, use deadly force. Kemper's men had executed this procedure before. In Germany, in March and April, as the Reich collapsed, columns of retreating Germans were common. Some surrendered immediately. Some attempted to bypass American positions. Some resisted. The protocol was applied each time. Challenge. Warn. Fire. The column below presented a textbook scenario for engagement. Armed enemy forces. Numerical superiority. Uncertain intent. They had stopped, but they had not dismounted or displayed white flags. They were simply idle on the road, engines running, waiting for something. The machine gunners had been trained on situations exactly like this. Traverse the guns to cover the length of the column. Fire on the lead and rear vehicles first to trap the column in place. Then suppress any dismounting troops. The .30 caliber could engage effectively at this range. The riflemen would pick individual targets. The entire column could be disabled in under a minute if the order came. The men expected the order. They had their angles. The machine gun crews had loaded belts and adjusted traverses. The riflemen had selected targets. Drivers, officers, anyone who looked like they might organize resistance. Fingers rested on triggers. Breathing slowed. Muscles tensed in anticipation of recoil. Kemper could see this readiness without looking. He could feel it. His platoon was prepared to execute. They were waiting for the word. They expected the word. Every engagement they had been part of started this way. The wait, the tension, then the signal to fire. But Kemper did not give the signal. He continued watching through the binoculars. His jaw was set. His expression was unreadable. Kemper lowers the binoculars. He looks at the column, then at his men. Then back at the column. He does not speak. The machine gunner to his left shifts his weight slightly. His eye is still pressed to the sight. His finger is on the trigger. He is waiting. Kemper raises the binoculars again. He focuses on the lead vehicle, a staff car. An officer is visible in the front passenger seat. He is not looking up the ridge. He is looking at a map or a document in his lap. Kemper adjusts focus. He scans the trucks. Soldiers sit on benches in the truck beds. Some have rifles across their knees. Others do not. One man is smoking. Another is leaning back with his eyes closed. Kemper moves to the next vehicle. Then the next. He is looking for something. He does not find it. He lowers the binoculars again. He does not reach for his rifle. He does not signal his radioman. He does not raise his hand to give the order. He simply stays still. The machine gunners glance at each other. Not obviously. Just a flick of the eyes. Then back to their sights. The column does not move. The Americans do not fire. The moment holds. At 08:51 hours, nothing has changed. The German column remains stationary. The American platoon remains in position. No shots have been fired. No orders have been given. One of the riflemen, a corporal named Hastings, shifts his aim from the driver of a truck to an officer standing beside it. Then back to the driver. He is trying to determine which is the higher value target. But there is no order to fire, so the determination is academic. Another soldier, Private Juarez, lowers his rifle slightly and looks toward Kemper. Kemper is still watching through the binoculars. Juarez raises his rifle again and resumes his aim. The platoon radioman, sitting behind a tree 5 meters from Kemper, keys his handset and whispers into it. He is calling battalion to report the situation. The response is delayed, static. Then a voice, hold position, confirm no hostile action. The radioman relays this to Kemper in a low voice. Kemper nods without lowering the binoculars. The radioman waits for further instruction. None comes. At 08:54 hours, movement occurs in the German column. The door of the lead staff car opens. The officer steps out. He stands beside the vehicle, looking up the ridge. He is not holding a weapon. His hands are at his sides. The Americans tense. The machine guns adjust aim fractionally, tracking the officer. He does not raise his hands. He does not wave a white cloth. He simply stands there, looking up at the ridge, where he knows the Americans are positioned. For 10 seconds, he does not move. Then he gets back into the car. The door closes. The column remains stopped. The engines continue idling. White exhaust rises and dissipates in the cold air. Kemper lowers the binoculars. He turns to his radioman and says something inaudible to the others. The radioman nods and does not transmit. The platoon waits. Time stretches. The sun rises higher. Shadows shorten. The column does not advance. The Americans do not fire. Lieutenant Robert Kemper had been in combat since Normandy. He had crossed France, crossed the Rhine, fought through Germany. He had seen surrender. He had seen resistance. He had learned to distinguish between the two. What he was looking at through the binoculars was not resistance. It was exhaustion. The German soldiers in the trucks were not preparing for combat. They were sitting, waiting. Some were slumped. Some were staring at nothing. They had the posture of men who were finished. The war had officially ended. Kemper knew this. The announcement had come through at midnight. Unconditional surrender. Hostilities ceased, but the announcement did not reach everyone simultaneously. Radio networks were fragmented. Chain of command was broken in many German units. Some still believed they were at war. Some did not know what to believe. Kemper also understood geography. The column was heading west toward American lines, not east toward Soviet lines. That was intentional. German forces preferred to surrender to Americans rather than Soviets. The calculation was rational. Treatment would be different. Survival was more likely, but surrender required both parties to recognize the situation. The Germans below had stopped when they saw the American position. They had not advanced. They had not attempted to fight. They had simply stopped and waited. The officer who stepped out of the staff car was not issuing a challenge. He was confirming that the Americans were there. He was making himself visible, so there would be no misunderstanding. Kemper's orders were to block the road and engage enemy forces, but his judgment told him that engaging this column would not serve any tactical purpose. The war was over. These men were not attempting to escape justice or regroup for further fighting. They were trying to reach a place where they could formally surrender. Opening fire would produce casualties. It would also produce confusion, panic, and potentially a disorganized response that could escalate into a firefight neither side wanted. The Americans would win, but men would die on both sides in the minutes before the Germans understood that resistance was pointless. Kemper decided the cost was not justified. He made the calculation silently, without consulting his men or his superiors. He simply did not give the order to fire. At 09:03 hours, the lead German staff car began moving again. Slowly. It rolled forward at walking pace, following the curve of the road westward, away from the American position. The trucks followed, one by one, maintaining spacing, engines straining under the weight of their loads. The Americans tracked the column with their weapons, but did not fire. Kemper watched through binoculars as each vehicle passed below the ridge and continued down the road. He did not lower the binoculars until the last truck disappeared around a bend. The platoon remained in position for another 15 minutes. Then Kemper gave the order to stand down. The machine guns were cleared and the belts removed. The riflemen lowered their weapons and sat back. No one spoke. Kemper moved to the radioman and took the handset. He reported that a German column had passed through the sector without incident. He described the composition. Transport vehicles estimated 200 personnel, no heavy weapons, moving west. He reported no engagement. Battalion acknowledged and instructed him to maintain position until relieved. The platoon settled into a holding pattern. Canteens were passed. A few men ate from ration tins. Hastings took out a cigarette but did not light it. Jaurès lay back against a tree and closed his eyes. At 10:30 hours, a jeep arrived with orders to withdraw. The platoon was needed elsewhere. They packed up and moved out, leaving the ridge empty. By noon, they were 10 kilometers away, assigned to another sector. The German column reached American lines near Pilsen later that day. They were processed as surrendering forces. Vehicles were impounded. Personnel were searched and detained. The process was routine by that stage of the war. Thousands of German soldiers were surrendering daily. No shots were fired on the ridge. No casualties were recorded. The encounter produced no after-action report beyond the brief radio transmission. Lieutenant Kemper's decision not to engage the German column on May 8, 1945, left no formal record. His daily log entry for that date reads, "Column observed, no engagement, no explanation, no detail." Battalion records confirm the radio transmission, but include no follow-up inquiry. The absence of combat was not noteworthy. In the final days of the war, non-engagement was becoming more common than engagement. German units were surrendering en masse. Standing orders prioritized processing surrenders over continuing combat operations. No commendation was issued for Kemper's restraint. No investigation questioned his failure to engage. The decision was neither rewarded nor punished. It was simply unremarked. None of the soldiers in Kemper's platoon spoke of the incident afterward. There was nothing to speak of. They had taken a position, observed an enemy column, and been ordered to withdraw. The absence of gunfire was not unusual in the final week of the war. It was almost expected. The German soldiers who passed below the ridge left no record of the encounter. Whether they knew how close they came to being fired upon is unknown. They may have seen the American position. They may have understood the risk. Or they may have been so exhausted and disoriented that they simply followed the vehicle ahead without thought. The gap in documentation is absolute. No historian has cataloged the event. No veteran organization has memorialized it. It exists only as a single line in a daily log and a brief radio transmission archived in battalion records that were never fully indexed. The moment was invisible to everyone except the 15 men on the ridge and the 200 men in the column below. Lieutenant Robert Kemper returned to the United States in August 1945. He was discharged in October and enrolled at the University of Michigan under the GI Bill. He studied engineering. He graduated in 1949. He worked for Ford Motor Company for 33 years. He retired in 1982. He did not attend reunions of the 16th Armored Division. He did not join veteran organizations. When asked about the war, he said he had been in Europe. He did not elaborate. His children knew he had served but did not know details. In 1990, his son found a photograph in a box in the basement. It showed a group of soldiers on a hillside. His son asked if his father was in the photo. Kemper looked at it and said yes. His son asked where it was taken. Kemper said Czechoslovakia. His son asked what happened there. Kemper said nothing happened. His son accepted this and put the photo back in the box. Kemper died in 1997. His obituary mentioned his service in World War II, but included no details. His military records were archived. They contain no annotations for May 8, 1945. Corporal Hastings and Private Jorez both survived the war. Hastings returned to Nebraska and worked as a teacher. Jorez returned to Texas and worked construction. Neither left written accounts of their service. Neither mentioned the ridge in any interview or letter that survives. The German soldiers who were in the column are unidentified. Their unit designation is unknown. Whether they were processed as prisoners, released after surrender, or repatriated is not recorded. They are one group among hundreds of thousands who surrendered in the final days of the European War. What is certain is that they reached American lines alive. They were not fired upon on the ridge east of Rokycany. They passed through and continued west. May 8, 1945. A hillside in Czechoslovakia. 15 Americans with machine guns and rifles. 200 Germans in a column below. Clear fields of fire. Weapons ready. Triggers not pulled. The war had ended hours before, but not everyone knew. The guns could have fired. The training said they should. The doctrine supported it. The tactical situation justified it. But Lieutenant Robert Kemper looked through binoculars and saw something that made him pause. He saw men who were no longer fighting. He saw a column that was not advancing but evacuating. He saw exhaustion, not aggression. He did not give the order. The guns stayed silent. The column passed. No one died on that ridge. There is no record of why. No explanation in writing. No statement made later. Kemper did not discuss it. His men did not ask. The moment occurred, ended, and was forgotten by everyone except those who were there. The ridge is still there. The road still runs below it. Trees have grown taller. The curve where the column stopped is unchanged. There is no marker. No indication that anything happened there or that anything did not happen. Silence is not absence. It is a presence of its own. The silence of guns that could have fired but did not is its own kind of history. It is unwritten, unspoken, and uncelebrated, but it was real on May 8, 1945 on a ridge in Czechoslovakia. Bloodshed was expected, and it did not occur. That is all.